After 50 years of marriage, he never gave me a wedding. But on the day we divorced, he gave her the most beautiful one I'd ever seen. There I was, standing in the back of a crowded garden, watching my husband, no, my ex-husband now, kiss another woman under a white floral arch. The guests clapped, the string quartet played, and even the doves were released into the sky. And all I could do was stand there, silent, invisible, forgotten. People say that with age comes peace, but no one talks about the storms that still find their way into your 60s. That day, I didn't just lose a husband. I lost the illusion I had built for half a century. But what they didn't know was that I was just getting started. Because sometimes when a woman finally walks away, she doesn't break. She begins. This is the story of how I went from a silenced wife to a woman who found freedom, fire, and yes, even love again. And it all started with a wedding that wasn't mine. My name is Amanda. I'm 64 years old. And for most of my adult life, I believed being a good wife meant being quiet. Richard and I met when I was just 19. He was charming, ambitious, polished, fresh out of college with big dreams. I, on the other hand, had just started working full-time as a secretary to help my mother pay off our family debt. He said we didn't need a wedding. Money was tight, love was enough. And I believed him. Year after year, I told myself the ceremony didn't matter, that the life we were building was more important than a dress or a ring. But when I saw him, standing beside Patricia in a designer tuxedo, the same man who told me weddings were a waste of money, suddenly every sacrifice I had ever made came rushing back. And I realized I had spent 5 decades loving a man who had only ever settled for me. But this is not a story about betrayal. This is a story about becoming. Because the moment I walked away was the moment I started walking toward myself. I used to tell myself that a wedding didn't matter. Back when Richard and I were young and struggling, he said we couldn't afford one. What matters is that we're together, he used to whisper, pulling me close on those quiet nights in our tiny apartment. I believed him, 'cause I loved him, and because, like many women of my generation, I thought being understanding was part of being a good wife. Years passed. Our lives got better. Promotions came, the house was upgraded, vacations were booked. But the wedding never happened. Every anniversary I waited. Every birthday I hoped. But Richard would just shrug it off with a laugh. We've been together so long, what's the point now? And so I smiled and nodded and tucked the ache a little deeper inside. I remember once I went shopping with a friend. She had just remarried at 60, and she showed me pictures of her small beach wedding. Simple, intimate, beautiful. I smiled for her, but when I got home, I cried in the bathroom, quietly, so Richard wouldn't hear. Because it wasn't about the dress or the flowers or the guests. It was about wanting to be chosen, publicly, joyfully, proudly. And after decades of being his rock, I never got to be his bride. That's why, on the day of our divorce, when I saw him standing at the altar, looking into another woman's eyes, giving her everything he once told me wasn't important, that was the day the illusion shattered. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that I had been settled for, not truly loved. And that, perhaps, was the deepest cut of all. Never let someone convince you that your dreams are too much. Sometimes it's not about what you ask for. It's about how little they're willing to give. But that wasn't the end of my story. Because what came next wasn't silence. It was fire. And it all started in the very house I thought was mine. When I realized I had never really belonged there. Let me tell you about the home we built, and how I slowly became a stranger inside it. We bought our first house after 10 years of marriage. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a leaky faucet that no plumber seemed to fix. But I loved it. I poured myself into that home, painted every wall, sewed the curtains, planted the rose bushes that still bloom by the fence. I even learned how to unclog the sink myself after the 3rd plumber gave up. Richard always said, "It's your touch that makes this place feel warm." And I smiled, thinking that was love. But over the years I began to notice something. He never really saw me, not beyond what I could do for him. When he came home, he didn't ask how my day was. He'd drop his briefcase, loosen his tie, and expect dinner on the table. When the kids were sick, I stayed up all night while he slept peacefully in the next room. And when I got sick, well, I still cooked, still cleaned, still folded his shirts. I became the quiet engine that kept everything running. And the sad part is, I wasn't alone in that. So many women I know gave their entire lives to serving their families. But somewhere along the way, they disappeared inside the very homes they built. We call it invisible labor. The cooking, the cleaning, the remembering of birthdays, the emotional support. The mental checklists we carry without ever being asked. Richard didn't mean to neglect me. But over time I stopped being a partner and became a fixture. Reliable, predictable, convenient. I remember one afternoon. I had a fever, probably over 102. I asked Richard if he could pick up dinner. He looked confused. What do you mean? There's food in the fridge. I ended up making soup for both of us while shivering in my robe. And when I finally sat down, he said, "Thanks, Han." Like nothing was wrong. Love isn't just about being there. It's about noticing. If you feel unseen in your own home, that's not a home. That's a weight. I lived in that house for over 40 years. But somewhere along the way, stopped feeling like mine. And the day Richard brought his new bride into it, I realized I had never truly been invited to stay. That night, something inside me finally broke. But also, something began. Next, let me tell you what happened when I finally stood up. And for the first time in 50 years, said the word, enough. I remember sitting on the couch that night. No lights, no noise. Just me and the silence of a house that no longer felt like mine. The front door opened. I heard voices, laughter, footsteps, the jingling of keys. And then I saw them. Richard still in his wedding suit, our son Mark behind him, holding his toddler with one arm and a slice of leftover cake in the other. Mark froze when he saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here? Sitting in the dark." I stared at him, stunned. What kind of question was that? I had lived in this house longer than he had been alive. But it hit me like a cold wave. He didn't see me as part of this home anymore. They all tried to play it cool. Pretend like nothing had happened. Mark said they'd just been running errands. Richard nodded, avoiding eye contact. I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out my phone and pressed play. The video filled the room with the sound of applause and wedding bells. Richard, my husband of 50 years, kissing another woman in front of a crowd. Mark standing there, clapping, smiling like it was the happiest day of his life. And do you know what Richard's first words were? "You were spying on me." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I didn't know how to tell you." Just blame. This is what we call gaslighting. It's when someone twists the truth so much, they make you feel like the crazy one. They shift the focus so you end up apologizing for being hurt, for speaking up, for seeing too clearly. Richard claimed it was nothing. Said Patricia had breast cancer. That she was dying. That her last wish was to have a wedding. "And you," he added, "are being childish." Then Mark chimed in. "Mom, seriously. You're being dramatic. It's not like they did anything wrong." I could feel my heart splinter. The boy I had nearly died giving birth to now looked at me like I was the problem. When people lie to protect their comfort instead of your truth, that's not love. That's betrayal wrapped in a smile. I had spent decades raising Mark, protecting him, sacrificing for him. But in that moment, I saw him for what he had become. Not a son, but a stranger wearing my son's face. And as I sat there, surrounded by people I once called family, I felt something I had never allowed myself to feel before. Anger. Quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing the truth and deciding you'll never let it be buried again. What I did next changed everything. For them, and for me. I had never been the confrontational type. For most of my life, I believed that keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. That if I didn't rock the boat, maybe the storm would pass. But that night, After years of silence, years of shrinking myself for the sake of family, I pressed play on my phone, and for the first time let the truth speak for itself. There it was, in full color. Richard, standing at the altar in his best suit, smiling, kissing another woman, surrounded by clapping guests. Guests who knew me, including our son. The moment the video ended, the air changed. Richard's face twisted, not in shame, not in sorrow, but in anger. "You were spying on me, Amanda? I can't believe you'd stoop so low." I stood there stunned. Spying. Is that what this was to him? Not once did he acknowledge what he had done. Not once did he ask how I felt. Instead, he reached out, grabbed the phone from my hand, and deleted the video right in front of me. Like erasing the evidence would erase the pain. Then came the explanation. The story they had rehearsed, perhaps. Patricia, he said, had been diagnosed with breast cancer. It was her last wish to have a wedding. He said they didn't tell me because they didn't want to upset me. He acted like it was a favor they were doing me, keeping me in the dark. This is what denial looks like. It's not always loud. Sometimes it comes dressed as logic, as compassion, as doing what's best. But underneath is cowardice. Because facing the truth requires more strength than most people are willing to give. And when denial doesn't work, they turn to guilt. "You're overreacting, Amanda. Patricia is dying, and you're jealous of a dying woman? What kind of person are you?" Mark said that last one. The child I raised, the child I nearly died giving birth to, now looked at me with cold judgment in his eyes, as if my pain was the problem. When people are caught, they often care less about what they did, and more about not looking like the villain. Their first instinct is not to make things right. It's to make you wrong. And in that moment, surrounded by the people I loved most, I realized something heartbreaking. They didn't expect me to speak up. They didn't expect me to leave. They thought I would swallow this, just like I had swallowed everything else. But they were wrong. The next morning, I handed Richard the divorce papers, and what followed shocked even me. The next morning, I woke before the sun. I made myself a cup of tea, packed a single suitcase, and carefully placed the divorce papers on the living room table, right next to the photo of our wedding-less 25th anniversary dinner. We were smiling in the picture, but I remember crying in the bathroom that night because he forgot to buy me flowers. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Richard came into the room, adjusting his sleeves like he always did when trying to act unbothered. He glanced at the papers, and for a brief second, I saw it, that flicker of disbelief in his eyes, like he truly thought I would never leave, that I would just forgive as always. "Amanda, this is ridiculous," he muttered. "We're not young anymore. Can't you just let it go?" I looked at him calmly. "No," I said. "That's exactly why I can't. We're not young anymore. I don't have time to keep pretending I'm okay." Then Mark showed up. He saw the suitcase, papers, and instead of asking how I felt, he asked the one question that made my heart sink. "Who's going to cook now? Who's going to take care of Jacob?" That's when I knew. I had raised a man who saw me not as his mother, but as his maid. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask what his father had done. He just wanted me to stay. For convenience, that was the final straw. I buttoned my coat, lifted my suitcase, and walked to the door. And when Mark kept following me, yelling, accusing, I turned back just once. "Mark," I said, my voice steady, "I am not your maid. I am your mother. And today, I am choosing myself. Boundaries aren't walls to keep others out. They're doors you close to protect your peace. And sometimes peace looks like walking away without apology." That was the day I let go of the version of me who always stayed, always served, always sacrificed. And in doing so, I met the woman I had forgotten for decades. Her name was Amanda. And for the first time in her life, she was free. If you were in Amanda's shoes, watching your own son defend the woman who replaced you, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have walked away just like she did? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and your voice truly matters here. Your story, your pain, your strength. It might just be the comfort someone else needs today. Now let me show you what came next, because what started as a quiet departure soon became the beginning of something truly beautiful. Before we continue, I want to pause and ask you something from the heart. If you were in Amanda's shoes, watching your own son defend the woman who replaced you, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have walked away just like she did? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and your thoughts truly matter here. Your story, your pain, your strength. It might just be the voice another woman needs to hear today. Now let's keep going. For the first time in decades, I woke up in a space that was mine. No dishes in the sink. No noise from the television in the next room. No one calling out my name needing something. Just me, the quiet, and a window full of morning light. I had moved back into a small apartment still under my name. A place I once rented before marriage, back when I was just Amanda Hayes. A 20-something woman with dreams of traveling the world and writing poetry on napkins at coffee shops. It felt like meeting an old friend I hadn't seen in a lifetime. At first, the silence was strange, unsettling even. I would still wake at 6 a.m., ready to make breakfast for someone who wasn't there. I'd reach for Richard's coffee mug or look for Jacob's toys out of habit. And some nights, the quiet hurt more than I expected. But as the days passed, that quiet started to feel different, peaceful, liberating. I didn't have to rush. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to put anyone else's needs ahead of mine. For the first time, I asked myself questions I hadn't dared in years. What do I want for dinner? Where do I want to go today? Who am I? Outside of being someone's wife, mother, caretaker. This is the part no one talks about. The grief that comes not just from losing people, but from realizing how much of yourself you've given away. And also, the quiet joy of discovering that you can still begin again. One afternoon while folding laundry, I saw a commercial on TV for a group travel tour through Europe. It featured a woman around my age, laughing with new friends, drinking wine in Santorini, and watching sunsets in Paris. For a moment I stared at the screen. And then, without overthinking it, I picked up the phone and booked the trip. I didn't ask permission. I didn't check calendars. I simply said yes to myself. The trip changed everything. I tasted foods I couldn't pronounce. I walked through old castles, got lost in side streets, and laughed so hard with strangers I nearly cried. Most importantly, I met women like me. Women who had spent decades putting others first. Who were now learning how to live for themselves. There was Eleanor, who had left an emotionally cold marriage at 58. June, a widow who'd finally taken her first solo trip after raising 4 children alone. And Doris, who carried a tiny journal and wrote down one beautiful thing she noticed each day. We weren't broken. We were blooming. It's never too late to come home to yourself. No matter how long it's been, the door is still open. By the end of that month, we had formed something beautiful. Not just a travel group, but a sisterhood. And we made a promise. We wouldn't go back to who we were before. Not ever. But just when I thought I had left the past behind, an unexpected encounter at a little cafe back home reminded me that some ghosts come dressed in lipstick and pearls. I had just returned from Europe, still riding the high of freedom, when I stopped by my favorite little cafe. The one with the warm pastries and mismatched chairs I used to dream in when I was young. I ordered a croissant, a latte, and sat by the window, feeling light, new, almost invincible. That's when I heard her voice. You must be Amanda. You look better in person. Not like what Richard described at all. Turned. There she was. Patricia. Hair curled to perfection, lips coated in soft rose pink, wearing a dress that screamed money and intention. She sat down across from me, uninvited, her eyes scanning me with the polished smile of a woman who always knew how to play the part. Talk. About Richard. About their unbreakable bond. About how tragic it was that they had to wait so many years to finally be together. She mentioned her breast cancer diagnosis, and then, conveniently, that it had been a misdiagnosis. She giggled as if that made everything better. He cried when he saw me, said he never stopped loving me. And then she said something that nearly made me laugh out loud. We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just fate. That's what she called stealing someone's husband after 50 years of marriage. But here's the thing about manipulators. They never want truth. They want control. Patricia wasn't looking for forgiveness. She was looking for validation, for me to somehow admit that what she and Richard had was meant to be. She told me how hard she had it, how the world judged her, how even now she didn't feel fully accepted by Richard's family. And finally, in her softest voice, she said, "I hope you're not bitter, Amanda. I truly want us to be at peace." That was when I put down my coffee cup and looked her square in the eye. Peace doesn't come from pretending wrong is right, I said. And forgiveness isn't owed just because you asked for it with a smile. There is a difference between closure and confrontation. Sometimes you don't need the last word. You just need to know your worth and walk away. I stood up, thanked the waiter, and left Patricia sitting there alone, still performing a play that no longer had an audience. For years I thought standing up for myself meant fighting back. But now I know. Sometimes true strength is simply refusing to play the game. But just when I thought the drama was over, what happened next took everything public and turned my quiet healing into a storm I never asked for. A few days after that strange cafe encounter with Patricia, I received a text from one of the women I had traveled with in Europe. "Amanda, is this you in the video that's going viral?" My heart dropped. Clicked the link. There I was, captured mid-conversation with Patricia, her voice trembling, my face calm but firm. And then Richard entering dramatically, wrapping his arms around her like a scene from a low-budget soap opera. Someone had filmed it all, and someone else had spun the story. Jealous ex-wife harasses loving couple. Husband rushes in to protect fiancé battling illness. The post had thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, and nearly all of them were against me. Ugh, how bitter can you be? Let them be happy. She had 50 years already. No wonder he left her. I sat in my apartment staring at the screen, feeling like a character in someone else's script. No one knew the truth. No one cared to ask. It didn't matter that Richard had betrayed me. It didn't matter that Patricia had lied. To the world, I was just an angry, aging woman who couldn't let go. This is what social media does. Takes a single moment, out of context, out of time, and turns it into a weapon. It's not built for nuance. It's built for noise. And in that noise, truth gets buried. And people like me get swallowed whole. I tried just once to post a comment. I wrote the truth. How Patricia had come into my marriage. How I had sacrificed a lifetime for a family that discarded me. How this wasn't a love triangle. It was a betrayal. But my words were drowned in replies that mocked me. That called me pathetic. That told me to move on. So I did. But not the way they expected. You don't have to defend your truth to people committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all. I deleted the app, turned off the notifications, and turned inward, back to the quiet, peaceful life I was building. But just when I thought I'd been forgotten, someone unexpected reignited the flames. It wasn't Patricia. It wasn't Richard. It was my own son, Mark. And what he posted next nearly broke me all over again. Just when I thought the worst was over, Mark, my only son, posted a picture online that felt like the final betrayal. It was a photo of Richard and Patricia standing hand in hand, with Mark and his wife smiling in the background, as if nothing had happened, as if I had never existed. The caption read, "As long as my family is together, that's all that matters." My family. He wasn't talking about me. And just like that, the internet had all the confirmation it needed. If her own son supports the other woman, then clearly she was the problem. I didn't cry. I wish I could tell you I sobbed into my pillow like in those movies. But no. I just sat there in silence, feeling something colder than sadness. Emptiness. I had carried Mark for 9 months, risked my life giving birth to him, stayed up with him through every fever, every heartbreak, every bad dream. And now, he was calling another woman family, while erasing me with a single caption. But the thing about lies is, they don't age well. And Patricia, well, she wasn't exactly made for real life. First, it all looked perfect. She moved into my old house. Richard doted on her. Mark praised her like a second mother. And everything sparkled on social media. But behind closed doors, it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Patricia didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't care for Jacob, their toddler. She was used to being taken care of, not taking care of anyone. One night, she prepared Jacob's formula with boiling water, forgot to let it cool, and the poor baby screamed in agony. That night ended in the ER, and that was the night Mark finally snapped. You don't work, you don't cook, you don't even help with Jacob. What good are you? He shouted at her. Patricia fired back with venom, reminding him that she was his father's wife, not a maid. They screamed at each other in the hospital hallway, until security asked them to leave. And of course, someone filmed it. Within hours, the video was online. Suddenly, people started asking questions. Wait, isn't that the same woman who cried about being harassed? Didn't she break up a 50-year marriage? Where's Amanda now? The comments turned. People dug up my old post, the one no one listened to at first. And this time, they read it. Really read it. Truth has a quiet patience. Wait. And when it finally arrives, it doesn't need to shout. In just a few days, the narrative flipped. The woman they once called bitter was now seen as brave. The man they once pitied was now just weak. And the son who betrayed his mother was exposed for what he truly was. A man who chose convenience over character. But while their world was falling apart, mine was just beginning. Let me show you how I found peace, love, and the kind of joy I thought I had lost forever. While their home fell apart in chaos and resentment, mine was filled with something I hadn't known in a long, long time. It started with small things. Waking up to sunlight pouring through the window, dancing barefoot in the kitchen while making coffee, reading late into the night with no one asking why the lights were still on. For the first time, I was living on my own terms. No one was waiting for dinner. No one needed me to fix their mess. No one treated my presence as expected, not appreciated. It was quiet. But the quiet wasn't lonely. It was freeing. Then came something unexpected. Fernando. We had met months earlier at a ballroom dance class for retirees, a gift I gave myself after the Europe trip. At first, he was just a kind partner with a gentle smile. He never talked over me, never tried to fix me. He just listened, respected my space. And when he asked me out to dinner, it wasn't because he needed anything, but simply because he wanted to know me. He didn't fall in love with the woman who folded his shirts or packed his lunch. He fell in love with Amanda as she was, not for what she could give. We danced, we talked, we laughed like teenagers on borrowed time. And when he asked one night, "Are you happy?" I didn't hesitate. More than I ever thought I could be. Healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about becoming someone stronger, softer, and more you than you've ever been before. I still get messages from people. Some apologizing for judging me too soon. Others thanking me for sharing my truth. But I don't need their approval anymore. I found my peace, my rhythm, my joy. Yes, my love. Not the kind that demands sacrifice, but the kind that honors freedom. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Before you go, I'd love to ask, what part of Amanda's story stayed with you the most? Leave a comment below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories that remind us it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of Amanda's story. Her journey reminds us of a powerful truth. It's never too late to choose yourself. No matter your age, no matter how much you've given, you deserve love, respect, and a life that truly feels like your own. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What part of Amanda's story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might comfort someone who's going through something similar right now. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful life stories that will stay with you long after the video ends. Until next time, take care, and never stop choosing yourself.